Every day, usually in the mornings, sometime between 5 and 11 a.m., we release our Central Indiana Scoreboard Show with all the news that you need to know from Central Indiana, the Pacers, Fever, Colts, IndyCar, IU, Purdue, Ball State, Butler, and of course the best high school sports coverage in Central Indiana. We have scores and highlights and details and sound bites, and it's really pretty good. So please join us. You are listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report, podcast number 286.5, a special edition of Will Rutherford's 5 Questions That Need Answers. All 5 questions about the Pacers and the NBA Finals, with a little bonus at the end about the Stanley Cup.
You're listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report with your host, Greg Mengelt.
Welcome, sports fans, to the Central Indiana Sports Report, a special edition of 5 Questions with Will Retherford today. Today, answering questions only about the NBA Finals, 5 questions about the Pacers being in the NBA Finals, with one bonus at the end about the Stanley Cup. Because it's Stanley Cup week, we can't go. We can't do a Will Rutherford's five questions without a bonus. Stanley Cup question. All right, well, welcome to back to the Central Indiana Sports Report. It's been a little while since we've done this.
It has.
We've been crazy busy with Pacers, Indy 500, and now the high school sports season, postseason's underway with scoreboards every day. So we haven't had a lot of time, and I know you've been busy as well with your career. So welcome back.
Yeah, it's been too long, but I've been on got to do the MLB, been able to do the Pacers. So I mean, we've gotten our time in, but it's good to be back.
All right, let's do it. 5 questions about the Pacers and the NBA Finals. And question number 1, Will, if the Pacers are going to win, what is the single most important thing that has to happen?
They have to rebound well. They need to win and dominate the boards, because that's where against the Knicks they gave up a lot of points with offensive rebounds. If they do that to the Thunder, they're going to get beat. The Thunder are too good to give second and third possessions to. They need to stop and be able to get out in transition and control the pace of the game through rebounding, and then Halliburton pushing the ball up the floor and then getting in transition. I think when they rebound well and they're able, it's an extension. It's their sixth man. It's their sixth player is the pace that they're able to play with. And that is really important, I think, for this series, just because of how much respect everyone has for the Thunder and how good they are.
We got to think that the head-to-head point guard matchup is going to be a huge one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which
I think so.
I don't mean necessarily that they're going to be playing head-to-head. I mean, which guy is better?
SGA is the MVP, so it's a little hard to say that Halliburton's on that level, but it begs the question. I think that he's played like an MVP at times. I think
it's been the best player in this postseason, I think.
The issue with the NBA, especially with kind of the conversation among the MVP, is I think that like points are really over hyped a little bit. I don't think that is necessarily like, just because SGA he scores 32 plus a game, like Halliburton's impact as far as his 20 and then his 9 assists, like how many points is he attributing to? How many points is he providing the Pacers night in and night out? So I definitely think that if it was an NBA of the 2000s, like when Steve Nash was winning MVPs and stuff like that, I mean, I think that Halliburton is kind of on that level of playmaker. I think he's better than Steve Nash personally, as far as what he's able to do on the court. But I mean, Steve Nash was a efficiency merchant. It wasn't like he was, putting up 20 shots a game. And I mean, he was, averaging 12, 5,
Similar.
and 11. Like, I mean, I just think that
in a
I'm
different
taking
era.
Halliburton. A different era, but I'm taking Halliburton, I still think, over him. I think when it's all said and done, Halliburton will be one of, if not the best point guard in NBA history. He's only 25 years old. He's only 25.
Magic
and his
Johnson?
style of
He's going to be better than
I
Magic Johnson?
I mean, but he's never going to
No,
win.
he's
He's never
never going to
going to
happen.
win the championships because of the way the NBA is with parity
He's
today.
also not
But
nearly as good as Magic Johnson was or Isaiah
I,
Thomas, but he's on probably the next level of great point guards, potentially.
he's whatever his peak is the tier below those two. Whatever that tier is
Right.
below them is probably where he's at. And I think that his importance, I thought he rebounded really well down the stretch in that Knicks series, and that was big because he was able to get the ball and then go out and transition by himself and get rolling, get going. You've got Neesmith and Siakam on the wings running. I think that's really vital for their success as far as how do they control their pace of game.
If Halliburton is able to add to his skill set and add to his knowledge as he should, there's no reason he can't be in the Chris Paul level of NBA star, and maybe even
Better than
above
Chris
that.
Paul.
Maybe even
Better
above
than
that. And
Chris
Chris
Paul.
Paul's top 5 point guard of all time, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I don't really see offensively because I feel like we watch this playoffs and like when Halliburton wants to get to the rim, he can't. Like he gets to the rim whenever he really wants to,
And
and
he
that's
should
something that
all the time.
I agree. But he's a really good 3-point shooter. I know that he's been a little inefficient this playoffs, but like historically, he's a 40% or better guy.
Well, when he
Shooting
takes
on
good 3-point shots, he's really good at making them, but he takes way too many
he's
bad ones.
also an incredible deep 3-point shooter. Like he is
If he's
one
squared
of the
up,
best. He is one of the best deep ball shooters in the league. As far as his ability to extend from that 3-point line, I think that Halliburton can be the better player in this series all around and what they encompass. I think that the Pacers are going to try to make it really hard for SGA. He's going to get his, but I mean, I think when we look at overall impact, I think you could say that Halliburton may have a bigger impact for the Pacers winning games than SGA does. My guess is Neesmith on SGA with the size. I mean, SGA, he's every bit of 6'6", which is what Neesmith runs to. I think that you're probably going to see Neesmith on SGA, and then I, Nimhard on J-Dub, and then I
mm,
guess I don't know.
mm.
Maybe Halliburton on. I don't know because then you get into the issue of do you really want Halliburton guarding the three? But he has done that in the last two series between Strus and Mikal Bridges. So I don't know. That's also something that I'm excited to see that I think will play a role in tonight's game is how defensively do the Pacers attack the Thunder.
You've been on record since, I don't know, October, saying the Pacers were going to win the championship this year. So I'm not going to ask who wins. So I'm going to ask how many games is it going to take the Pacers to win the championship?
Anybody that says anything less than six is probably unrealistic. I I'm not sure that even that's realistic. It may only be it may be seven's the only avenue that they have. I was listening to people talk today that the Pacers have no chance, but we've sat here and everybody thought the Cavs were the best team in the NBA, and then the Pacers went and beat them in five. And you saw a
I sure
Nuggets
did.
team. You saw a Nuggets team that was playing with three guys and take them to seven, a
Two and a
healthy
half.
seven. They got blown up, I mean, blown out in
Of
Game
course, one
Seven.
of
But
those guys is one of the best players who's ever played the game. So
sure, but is having five guys that can contribute more um than what Jokic did. I mean, he's great, but I mean, he's still. I mean, his 30, 10, and 10. I mean, that's two guys for the Pacers, and then you got the other three providing more than the four that the Nuggets were. I just think that anybody that thinks the Pacers aren't a better matchup against the Thunder versus the Nuggets is silly.
I
So
think you're right.
I don't know how you can not say. I mean, the Pacers went in. The Cavs and the Thunder are kind of on a similar track as far as what they're able to do. With the fact that they've got the five guys, they've got a big that in Holmgren that stretches the floor, similar to the way that Evan Mobley did. They have the big that is going to sit in the post, Jarrett Allen and Isaiah Hartenstein. They've got I don't know, a defensive minded guy in on the wing. Lou Dort. The Cavs also had that. I think that they've got the same point guard. I mean, Shai's obviously better than Darius Garland was. They have but I mean, Shai plays that Donovan Mitchell role a lot better. Like, where can't the Pacers match up with this team? Because I thought they matched up with the Cavs really well, and they played really well in that series. And it just baffles me that people are like Pacers are going to get swept or Pacers, Thunder win in five. I don't see that. I think that's completely irrational to say, and it's not. It's just people that haven't watched enough Pacers basketball.
Question number 3, Will, there is always a surprise player in the NBA Finals. Sometimes, just matchup wise, you remember Fred Van Vliet for the
Hmm.
Raptors and Andre Iguodala, obviously. Cedric Maxwell, you probably don't remember, 1981 was the MVP, not Larry Bird, of the Finals. Um, Jason Terry, remember doing the jet against LeBron for
Hmm.
Dallas. There's always a guy who plays that role and maybe not wind up being the MVP because that's going to be Tyrese Halliburton, I think, if the Pacers win, but plays a huge role. And it could be a Thunders player too. Thunders. I said Thunders again. I've been saying Thunders and Fevers all the time, and I don't catch it until it's too late. Anyway, who is that player going to be for the Pacers, and maybe one for the Thunder if they win?
I think for if the Pacers do it and they win, I I really think that Neesmith continues this trajectory he's on. I think it's Neesmith. I think that he is really good from the 3-point line. I think he does similar to what he kind of did in those first two Nick games. I would imagine that ankle with the extra rest is probably back to 100% if he was bothered by it there in those last few games. I love what he's able to do defensively as far as his matching up against other players and work getting over screens. I think that Neesmith is going to be the X factor of if the Pacers if he's good, the Pacers I will win this series. If he's good, the Pacers will win this series. I think for the Thunder, I think it's Lou Dort because I think it's going to be their best defensive player. Can their best defensive player stop one of the Pacers players?
But is
I
their
would
best
imagine.
defensive player Lou Dort, or is it Alex Caruso?
I
Because
think it's Lou Dort.
Caruso is so savvy. It's just, yeah, Dort's great too, but those two guys combined, when they're on the floor, it's just havoc.
I've never been. I mean, I think Alex Caruso is a good player. I don't think he's a great player. I think
He is a very good defensive player. At least
he's
he
a
has been in the playoffs.
he's a plus defender. But this is a tough Pacers matchup. This is a really good backcourt for the Pacers. This is the best backcourt that he's faced as far as his defensive matchup. I think the Pacers' ability to get out and transition sometimes makes matchup defense meaningless because the Pacers are going. You have to get back, and
That's
you're
what they
just
need to
matched up
do.
with whoever their size advantage is. If they put Caruso on Halliburton, he's going to get cooked. I mean, Halliburton does this to every defender that he faces. He just quite
That's
frankly
not happening.
he outsmarts him. He if you try to take Halliburton away and you devote to taking Halliburton away, he's going to find other people open because then you've got a help
Yeah.
side defender that can't do that.
Where Caruso is such a great defender, I believe, though, is off ball. He just creates problems throughout the half court. But you're right. If the Pacers get out and run, the matchups don't even matter.
But does him being an off ball? I mean, do we care if he takes out Andrew Nimhard? Because I don't. If Andrew
No,
Nimhard
I'm talking
scores
about getting
zero
in
points,
passing lanes and steals
uh,
and turning
but
defensive plays into offensive plays, and he's fantastic at that.
it's a team that really takes care of the basketball for the most part. Like they do a really good job of taking care of it. Halliburton very rarely makes poor passes. I'm not saying that Nimhard can't get a little trigger happy sometimes. He can, but to me, I just don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. I think Caruso will be a non-factor in this playoff. I think that he'll be somebody that comes in, gets his minutes, and he might, steal a game where he plays really well. But over the course of the entire series, we're not going to spend our time talking about how good Caruso played defensively. That's just how I feel about it. I still think that the reason I said Lou Dort is because I think the starting minutes will make a difference. And are they going to put him on Halliburton? because that is if he's able to effectively slow down Halliburton, then that's going to be something that probably results in the Thunder winning this series. So he, to me, if he plays really well defensively, that's gonna be a huge impact.
All right, question number 4, Will, and I told you ahead of time. This is the only question I told you ahead of time.
Hmm.
We like doing it where you don't know the questions, but I wanted you to
Yep.
be able to do a little research. So, Rick Carlisle came into this season probably somewhere around top 20 coach of all time. Maybe you could
Hmm.
argue that he was around 15. Impressive number of wins, a lot of different franchises taken to the brink of championships, only won one. Where does he rank right now in NBA history? Is he top 10, 15? And what happens if the Pacers win the championship to his legacy as a head coach?
Well, I think that if he does it, he probably uh, the two most underdog finals runs ever of this
Two of
century,
them.
not ever. Between the Mavs and the Pacers, neither team that really thought they had any chance. He beat the Heat super team. He had to beat that, the Spurs dynasty that they were on there to get there. I mean, so I think it's two finals that really stand a testament to what he is. I mean, if people view Doc Rivers as a top 15 coach,
I sure hope not.
Carlisle is above that.
Of
I mean,
course, yes.
the NBA. I mean, they've got Doc Rivers listed in the NBA 75 as one of the top 15 coaches of all time. And
Ridiculous.
if that is if Doc Rivers is on that list, then Carlisle is for sure already on that list with absolute certainty. I don't see how you could sit here and tell me that Doc Rivers is a more effective head coach than Rick Carlisle. I just don't see where
No way.
that's realistic. And I've had my qualms with Carlisle a little bit. I thought there's a few times that he sits on his hands a little too long and doesn't necessarily adjust as quickly
No
as he
doubt.
probably should.
No
But
doubt.
to say that he's not a great coach, I mean, I think he moved into all top 10 all time for playoff wins. So if we
Yeah.
say that championships are all that matter and the playoffs is where you really you eat your steak, then is Carlisle not a top 10 coach of all time to have a top 10 playoff wins of all time too? I mean that so I feel like that's the tier he's on. He's probably right on that top 10 to 12 list, probably all time to me is where he ranks.
All right, let me read you a few coaches who we know he's not better than, and then we'll make the argument of with the other ones. Red Auerbach,
Okay.
obviously. Greg Popovich, he's not on that level. Phil Jackson, not on that level. Red Holtzman, Chuck Daly, I think we can all agree. Pat Riley,
Steve
I
Kerr.
think even Steve Kerr probably, although you could make an argument that whoever took that job was about to win a bunch of championships. But yes, I think Eric Spoelstra has proven himself since winning his championships. Um,
Mm, I
he had a good situation to win the championships, but what he's done since then, I think, puts him on that level. So Larry Brown,
I mean, that's kind of the name I had circled when I was doing my research of like that's probably where we start having the conversation for sure. Um, I mean, I've seen Jack Ramsey's name on there as
yeah,
somebody
Jack
that I mean,
Ramsey was a great one.
I feel like that's probably where you start having that conversation. I think once you get to maybe 7 or 8, then Carlisle enters the conversation of maybe like you could definitely see situations where you could make an argument that he is or maybe he isn't. I The NBA is one of those where like, you kind of have these great coaches that are highly regarded and stuff, but does the coaches don't like they don't jump off the names the way that some I think sometimes like they don't have usually the charisma that like NFL coaches do. Like everybody talks about John Gruden. And like John Gruden this, and these NFL coaches almost like take on a life of their own where I don't necessarily know if the NBA is like that. I mean, it's more kind of Are they great strategists? Do they win a lot of games? What are their teams like? What is their rotation? What's the roster construction? I mean, like Phil Jackson had a hand in every single roster decision that was made on the teams he coached. Where does that rank as far as where we put them? Like, to me, I think that Carlisle is proven with his playoff success that he deserves to be a top 10 coach in that conversation. Other people may say that, well, but Rick Carlisle didn't always coach great teams either. He had teams with losing records. Well, there are coaches on that list that maybe never had a team that had a losing record, or maybe had one or two with maybe a down year. So, and a lot of those coaches obviously are, I mean, that's some of those coaches have been out of the game for 40 years. It's a very different NBA now than it was 40 years ago. So it's one of those where do we start putting these coaches in a tier where we talk about generation or era versus, I mean, we do that with players all the time. I mean, everybody says that you can't really compare Jordan and LeBron because of the era. They played in two completely different eras, and I think that that's a valid argument. So I think coaches are probably there too. Does what Red Auerbach did with the Celtics in the 60s and 70s, would he have been able to replicate that in today's NBA? We just don't know. I mean,
No,
we have
no.
no way of
He was
making
the
that
only
argument.
owner. He was the only NBA owner who was really paying attention to what was going on in the league and completely
Hmm.
took advantage of all the other owners.
Yeah, I mean,
So as far as executive, there's no doubt he's number one. He just completely stole 15 championships or whatever it was from the rest of the league. But yeah, it's an interesting question. Here's a guy we haven't mentioned is Bill Russell, who coached 2 NBA championships and was in 2 other NBA finals. Of course, he had the unfair advantage of having Bill Russell on his team, so he was a player
hmm
coach. And
yeah.
so I don't know if it was the coaching as much as him being the best player in the world.
I
Interesting
see.
question.
I think it is interesting because we don't talk about, like I said, we don't talk about these NBA coaches like their personalities. Like they have an aura or a larger than life kind of presence about them. The way that if I were to say Don Shula, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If I were to say John Gruden, you know exactly what I'm talking. Bill Belichick, like with these NBA coaches, it kind of gets lost in the mud. True NBA fans,
Yeah,
they probably know, but the general public,
it's
if
not
if
seen
you
as important in the NBA as it is the NFL, the head coaching
No,
job.
which what
I mean,
I find so funny because I think that they maybe have a bigger impact and role in the game than an NFL head coach does. When you really sit back and view it from the lens, as
mm,
far as drawing up plays, like drawing up plays on the moment, spur of the moment. You've got a 2 minute media timeout. I mean, when is Bill Belichick doing that? He's not. He did that in July. He just calls the play and hopes that it works. I think that it's the coaching in the NBA to me is more intimate than the NFL.
I mean, I'm going to say this: Mark Dagnall. When you say his name, most people have no idea who you're talking about, and
No,
he just coached an 80-win team. That would never happen in the NFL. Is the point?
no, absolutely not.
You know?
Everybody knows who Nick Sirianni is. Everybody knows who Andy Reid is. Like
Yes,
everyone knows Pete
yes,
Carroll. I mean, like we could just keep going off this list of like, hey, like everybody, like, Sean McVay, Sean Payton,
yep,
like these are sports. I mean, I couldn't even. Most people couldn't have been able to even tell you the Thunder's head coach, and they'd probably think it's still Billy Donovan. If we're
yeah,
being honest with ourselves, if you
yep,
knew that, so I don't know. I mean, it's
yep.
generation,
It's
it's
weird, but
era, it's
and I
it's a
think
great
football is way
conversation.
more important. 11 moving parts is way harder than, I'm sorry, 22 moving parts is way harder to coach than 5 moving parts.
I would say that the NFL, football in general, when you get to that level, is infinitely more complex than
Yes,
basketball.
yes,
Basketball, in its
absolutely.
purest sense, is a quite frequently it's a simple game. There's
Yes.
there's maybe
Throw the
some
ball out there.
complexities and stuff.
Simple concepts, good rotations, making good decisions when it matters, being a good clubhouse guy. Those are the important things in the NBA. And
I
by
mean,
the way, I think maybe with the exception of rotations at time, um, we got a pretty good one.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think he is an effective coach. I think he's calm, cool, collected. He's been there, and I think that I think that the Pacers probably have a coaching advantage in this playoff series. I know that people may say that sounds crazy, but
No, especially
he's
with experience. Yeah.
got a lot more basketball knowledge and a lot more situations that he's been around than Mark Daigneault
Yeah.
has.
Well, question five. I know you're going to disagree with me. I think most people will disagree with me, but as someone who has not only watched the Pacers since 1982, my first memories of watching games, but gone back and studied the history of the franchise, I believe this is the fourth best Pacers team in history as of right now. Now, people will say, oh, they're only the second ever to get to the NBA Finals. But let me make the argument before you go. 1994, the Pacers had never had been even a factor in the slightest in the NBA picture until then. Reggie Miller takes them to Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals, and the entire state of Indiana, for the first time ever, jumps on the Pacers bandwagon. And now Indiana's full of Pacers fans, and it hadn't been before. It had been full of Celtics, Lakers, and Bulls fans. 1998 was the year that they lost to the Bulls in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Without question, the most talented, the best team that they've ever had. Without question, 1998. And then 2000, of course, they get to the finals. They win 2 games in the finals. If they don't lose to overtime in the game that Kobe Bryant suddenly becomes a superstar, they might win that series. And then, of course, you've got this year. Your thoughts?
You know, for like my generation, it was always those like 2012, 2013 team that we all would sit back with George Hill and Paul George, David West, Lance Stevenson, Roy Hibbert,
Good
Danny
teams, but not
Granger.
on that list.
Like that was the team that we all because that was the team we knew. That's the only time the Pacers have been great in our lifetime.
The other one,
I
by the way, for everybody, just to let you know, the other one that would be considered would be the 04-05 teams that
that's
turned into the
the
Malice and the
04 team.
Palace.
That is
That's
the
probably
best
the most
team.
talented team that they've had. Well,
So I
98
guess
was close.
so was your wording if we're going to get into the linguistics, did you say greatest or best?
Best, well, greatest, most important, greatest. If you made a list of these are the teams to be most remembered of all time among Pacers teams. I believe this is number 4 right now. Of course, they win the championship. That all changes. They're number 1. Period.
Um, I think right now, I think, oh God, it's such a.
By the way,
I
no
think
team ever took Michael Jordan to 7 games during his run, except for the 1998 Pacers.
if we're going off greatest, this is the second greatest Pacers team that we've had, and I'll say this. You talked about 1994 and the impact of how that really brought people to rally around the Pacers. That is what this 2025 team has done. The
It's
NBA
a very
in
similar
Indiana,
team.
the Pacers have been a team that, while it's a good, strong fan base, it was lacking that younger generation that has not really seen the Pacers be uber successful. The the 18 to 35 demographic that's vitally important in the NBA. That's where all of the social media impressions. That's where all of
And the dramatics. The
that's
dramatics
the
between the
dramatics
two
too.
teams.
The
Yeah.
dramatics too, but you know, like that 18 to 35 demographic that lives on social media, that is a vital piece and an important part of their life, where the NBA now lives, whether people want to admit it or not. The
Right, of
NBA
course.
owns social media compared to the sports. That is the fan base that the Pacers needed. And they have them now. Hook, line, and sinker. You have just created an entirely new generation of diehard Pacers fans that will go on similar to how your generation, how 94 was for your generation. And so I think if we're going to compare that, the 2000 team, sure, they went to the finals. They kind of got blown out by the Lakers. That 98 team, went to. I mean,
The
they ran
Lakers
into a
sure didn't
buzzsaw.
feel that way. The Lakers sure didn't feel that way.
But they ran into a buzzsaw. You
Mm,
put anybody up against that. Like it sucks that the Pacers don't come into the finals where there's this bad, like not bad, but like an okay, Western Conference representative. Like they did it against the Lakers at the beginning of their
right,
dynasty,
right.
and they're now doing it against this team that everybody says is like one of the best NBA teams ever. Like
Yes,
it's
record
funny that
wise, and what they've accomplished for sure.
when the Pacers accomplish this, it's like the best team is standing in front of them, which is you want to win a championship against the best team, but you also want to raise a banner too, so you don't really care how it gets done. But it's just I think that this year's equally as important as '94 was. I mean, that 2000 team, your generation remembers it, but that I wasn't even born, and my parents weren't
Right.
even married, and
In fact,
when the Pacers played that series.
I went with
So,
your dad to one of those games
yeah, I
in
mean,
the 1994 playoffs. So, and he definitely was not married at the time.
and he wasn't married in 2000 either. They got married after that. So, and that '94 team, it's a shame. I wasn't really old. I don't remember any of it. But as far as like going back and like that Malice at the Palace documentary that they run, it's like my God, that team was so good. That team was going to
They
win the
were.
NBA Finals. That was the best team.
Yeah.
That's probably the
Too many
oh.
knuckleheads to be able to say
Oh,
that.
that's so talented though. They were
So
so
talented, though.
talented. If
I
they
don't
just
think
stayed the
people remember
course.
how good Ron Artest was at that time. I believe he was the best player in the NBA at that
Well,
point.
Jermaine O'Neal too. I mean, just an
Yeah.
absolute. I mean,
Yeah.
he is. He's maybe I don't know, maybe the best pacer ever as far as like skill, like what he was able to do in his generation. Like he's maybe the best pacer ever as far as what he brought to the table. I mean, obviously Reggie's the
Yeah.
greatest. I mean, there's no
Right. Of
question.
course.
But
Yes.
best,
Yes. But
we've
he's
had
not the
this
best.
conversation before. That
Yes.
greatest and best are two different.
Yep.
They're two different things. I think as far as the best Pacers team, I mean, I don't know. It's
That was
now
98.
it's so far removed generationally that it's really hard. The game's so much different now. It's really hard to compare like
It was
that.
98. It was
I
98. There's
wasn't.
almost no doubt about it. They had their whole lineup was freaking Hall of Famers. And with Chris Mullin, Mark Jackson, Reggie Miller, Rick Smits, Dale Davis, Antonio Davis, Derek McKee, they were every bit as
Jalen
good as the
Rose.
Bulls. Yeah, they led the Bulls in the fourth quarter of Game 7 in Chicago.
Yeah.
And Michael Jordan said it was the best team he faced after the Pistons. And
I mean,
they're the best Pacers team of all time. As far as just, if they were all to play each other, that team would win.
I think in this century, this is maybe the second best Pacers team behind that '04 team on paper.
Yeah,
It's
maybe.
definitely better than the 12 and 13 Pacers. So
Definitely.
maybe this is the third best team
Yeah.
in Pacers history. Um, but I think it's the second greatest and it's the third best right now, and that could all change with I mean them coming
Yeah.
out and winning. Then there's no the debate ends.
It could
There's
all
no debate at
change just
all.
by winning a couple of games if they do it the right way and everything. It's all about the change in the next few days. Two quick questions before we go, and I got just a couple of minutes, Will. Number
Okay.
one, if the Pacers don't win this series, do they make a move in the offseason to try to be the favorites next year? Because they really look like they can be.
This depends on where do they go? I think is the question. Where do
Do
they
they add a
actually
super? Do
go?
they try to add a superstar if they don't win this?
I I think they don't, just knowing how Pritchard works and how the Simon family works, because I don't think they're going to want to pay another superstar. I guess the only weakness that I see in this starting four or starting five, I would say that I see as like you could definitely upgrade would be Turner. But I don't know if they'll do that.
I don't think they will. I think they're going to sign him now.
I guess the conversation. Do you like it? Kevin Durant, is that somebody that you want to go get? But who does that push out? I don't really know where that
It would have to be somebody
the,
younger than that, I would think. All right. Question number 2, Will, because we'll have plenty of time to talk about that one. Is the Cup finally going north of the border?
no. For the large part of that game, the Panthers outplayed the Oilers. Overtime's always a crapshoot. It doesn't. I mean, hockey's a crapshoot game sometimes. a random bounce that goes your way from, you know, from the blue line. I no, I think that the Panthers outplayed the Oilers in that game. And the Panthers, they won in Edmonton. So I mean, they always say the series doesn't start till a team wins on the road. That hockey at the home ice advantage doesn't necessarily matter as much as it does in like the NBA. But no, the Panthers are the better team. They're the more physical team. They have the better goaltender. Stu Skinner is gonna this run he's on is going to come cracking at some point because he's not a very good goaltender and he's playing like one, and that doesn't that he's going to come back down to earth. And this Florida team will just wear on Florida's like kind of like the Pacers a little bit as far as like their ability over the course of a 7 game series. Like they're just going to
Hadn't
wear
thought
on
of
the
that, but good
Oilers.
point.
They are just going to wear on them, between Bennett, Kachuk, and Marchand. Like those are two just greasy guys, just kind of scrummy players. And I have faith that Sasha Barkov is far. I mean, that's 2025 Selke, center, forward is him, best defensive forward. He's going to be able to slow McDavid down enough to where I think that I think Panthers in six. I think it's 4-2 Pacers or Panthers win in six. Just like I think the Pacers are going to win in six. So,
Panthers
um,
and Pacers. And I see
yep.
the Panthers right over your shoulder, Will.
Well, not the Florida Panthers, but
No,
the
the
Elwood
Elwood
Panthers.
Panthers. And
But
everybody knows it's great to be an Elwood Panther. Thanks so much to Will for joining us, and thank you for listening. Please do us a huge favor if you haven't done so already and go subscribe to our YouTube page or SoundCloud, Spotify, Amazon, Apple. But our hub is at YouTube, and we're going to start having video there in the background of our podcasts and scores and stats and all that in the background. So that'll be cool. You're going to want to be subscribed for that. Also, we could really use your help spreading the word about the Central Indiana Sports Report. So if you tell your friends or family, or as Susie pointed out, your enemies or some stranger on the street, if they have on a Pacer shirt or Colts or Fever, just say, hey, you over there, I've see that you're a Pacers fan, and I've been listening to this podcast, and it's really cool. Go check it out. Something like that. Central Indiana Sports Report is brought to you by ITG Media, and I love Susie.